This happened just over a month ago. I'm 33 now, a single dad. I moved back to my childhood village after my mother passed. I thought it would help me feel connected, but it's been nothing like I expected. I found myself sifting through old boxes in my mom's farmhouse. The floor creaked, and the air felt thick. I really didn't know what I was looking for, maybe just a sense of closure. I've never stopped thinking about it. I came across her dusty journal. The pages were yellowed and brittle. At first I thought it was just about her garden. But then I found entries about a farmer who made a deal with something dark 8 years ago. It struck me as odd. Why hadn't I heard about this before? I wasn't sure if anyone in the village talked about it. After I read the last entry, I started noticing strange things. The crops around us seemed to wither. Friends mentioned their animals acting weirdly. I could hear whispers when I walked by, their eyes darting away like they were scared of something. Maybe I was just imagining it all, but it felt like someone was always watching. My heartbeat quickened every time I stepped out the door. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just my nerves. Then I saw Old Man Harris one evening. He was standing at the edge of his field, looking at the sky. I felt drawn to ask him about the farmer's deal. As I approached, he turned to me, his face pale. I asked about the farmer, and for a second I thought I saw fear in his eyes. He didn't answer. He just shook his head slowly like he was trying to tell me to leave it alone. I felt a chill run down my spine. I backed away, unsure why. Days passed and things got worse. The feeling of being watched grew stronger. I found myself glancing over my shoulder, especially when working in the garden. My son Ethan kept talking about a man with no face. I figured it was just his imagination. Kids say weird things, right? But it stuck with me. One night, I stood by the window looking out into the darkness. A rustle caught my attention. I squinted into the woods. Something moved. It was quick, darting between the trees. My heart raced. I thought I could hear whispers, low and urgent. Then I saw him. A figure on the edge of the field, silhouetted by the moonlight. He was just standing there, staring at me. I blinked, and when I looked again, he was gone. I didn't sleep that night. It felt wrong. I felt a weight pressing down on me, as if I was already caught in something deep. What had that farmer done 8 years ago? I needed to know. But then again, did I really want to find out? The next morning I woke up earlier than usual. I tried to shake off the heaviness from last night, but it hung around me like a thick fog. I forced myself to get up and make breakfast for Ethan. As I stood at the stove, flipping pancakes, I noticed he was unusually quiet. When I glanced at him, he was staring out the window. "Morning, buddy. You okay?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful. He didn't answer, just kept looking outside. I followed his gaze. My stomach dropped as I saw a shadow moving near the edge of the woods, the same place I had seen the figure last night. "Ethan?" I prompted. "What do you see?" He turned to me, his eyes wide. "The man is back. He's in the trees." Panic surged through me. I didn't want to entertain the idea, but a part of me felt this was real. "What does he look like?" I asked cautiously. "He doesn't have a face, Dad. I told you before." His voice trembled. I couldn't brush it off. I tried to act calm, but I felt my heart start to race. I took a deep breath and ruffled Ethan's hair. "Let's go check it out together, okay?" He nodded, but I could see the fear lingering in his eyes. I grabbed my jacket and together we stepped outside. The air was cooler than it had been, a breath of chill brushing against my arms. We walked toward the trees, my feet crunching on the dry leaves. I kept glancing around, half expecting that figure to appear again. After a few minutes of awkward silence, I took Ethan's hand. "You know how we have to be brave, right?" "Yeah," he whispered. When we reached the edge of the woods, I felt a wave of unease. The trees loomed tall and dark, their branches twisting like fingers reaching out. Still, something compelled me to step closer. I was determined to find answers, though a part of my mind screamed at me to turn back. Suddenly, Ethan tugged on my sleeve. "Look." There, at the base of a tree, was something wedged in the ground. My heart nearly stopped. I kneeled to inspect it. It was an old, rusty pendant, shaped like a crescent moon. The sight of it sent a jolt through me. A strange sense of familiarity washed over, yet I couldn't recall ever seeing it. "Can I hold it?" Ethan asked, his voice almost a whisper. I hesitated, and then I handed it over. As soon as he touched it, a sharp wind blew through the trees. I felt a sudden chill, and Ethan dropped the pendant. It hit the ground with a soft thud, and I could swear I heard faint whispers on the breeze. "Dad," Ethan yelped, backing away. I felt a jolt of fear. "Let's go back, now." I gripped his hand tighter and hurried away from those ominous woods. Just before we reached the open field, I turned back. I had to make sense of what I had seen. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement again, those same shadows shifting between the trees. Panic rose in my chest, and I quickly led Ethan home. Once inside, I locked the door with trembling hands. What was happening in this village? I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stirred up something dangerous. I needed to learn more about that farmer's deal. It felt like my only option, though dread crept in. But that pendant? What did it mean? I had more questions than answers now, and I couldn't ignore the feeling that time was running out. The next day, I felt unsteady, like I was walking on thin ice. Ethan was at school, and I couldn't shake the lingering unease from our encounter with the pendant. I needed answers. I decided to visit the farmer, the man who had made that mysterious deal. The sun hung low in the sky as I approached his property. The fields were still, almost too quiet, and the house looked worn and tired, as if it had absorbed all the secrets it held. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. The wait felt eternal. Finally, he answered, his face lined with years and worry. "What do you want?" His voice was gravelly, but there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "I need to ask you about your deal," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "The one you made years ago." He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if checking for someone. "You shouldn't be asking about that. It's not good for you." "Please," I pressed, feeling desperation seep into my words. "It has to do with Ethan. Something is wrong in the woods. We found a pendant." The farmer's expression darkened. He stepped aside, allowing me into his dimly lit house. The air reeked of dampness and decay. "Come in, but understand this. Some things are better left buried." I nodded, and he gestured for me to sit at a rickety table cluttered with old tools. "Years ago, I made a deal to save my farm," he began, "but it cost me. The price was too high, and now it seems to be coming back." "What did you trade?" I asked, feeling the weight of each word. "Souls," he whispered, glancing nervously at the windows. "Not just mine, the souls of children. I thought I could escape it, but it haunts me still. If you're asking about the pendant, it connects to them." I sat back, stunned. "What do you mean? Are you saying Ethan is in danger?" He leaned in closer, his voice trembling. "You need to keep him away from the woods. Whatever you found there, it doesn't belong to this world, and neither do the shadows." Suddenly the room went cold, and a soft thudding echoed from the back of the house. My heart raced. What was that? I felt a chill down my spine, and without thinking I stood up. "Stay here," the farmer warned, but I didn't listen. I had to know what was happening. As I moved towards the noise, I could hear distant whispers, a cacophony that seemed to call my name. I opened a door at the end of the hallway and stepped into a darkened room filled with old equipment. But then I saw it, a glimmering light at the far corner. That's when the shadows shifted, coiling around me. I couldn't breathe. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. They weren't just sounds, they were voices pleading and angry. I stumbled back, but the door slammed shut behind me. Panic gripped me. "Get out!" the farmer shouted from the hallway. Then everything went dark. I woke up on the floor, gasping for air. The room was dim, the light from the corner gone. I scrambled up, heart racing. The farmer's voice echoed in my mind. Some things are better left buried. The door I had just come through stood ajar, swaying slightly. I rushed to it, half expecting to feel cold fingers gripping my wrists, but I pushed through and stumbled back into the hallway. The farmer was gone. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. Only silence answered. I trotted through the house, desperation crawling under my skin. The smell of decay had grown stronger, wrapping around me like a heavy fog. I burst through the front door and stepped onto the deck. The air felt sharper outside, but the stillness in the fields made me shiver. Then I saw him, the farmer, standing at the edge of the woods, staring into the darkness. I called out to him, but he didn't respond. He was lost in thought, or perhaps something worse. "Wait!" I shouted, rushing towards him. But he didn't move. The branches of the trees swayed, as if inviting me closer. A knot tightened in my stomach. When I reached him, I touched his shoulder. "What's going on? What did I just see back there?" He turned to me, his eyes wide and frantic. "We don't have time. You must leave. Take Ethan and go, now." "What do you mean?" I was confused. "I can't just leave him. He needs to know what's happening." "Your child is marked," he yelled, looking back toward the woods. "The shadows will come for him. They want what they've lost." His words hit me like a slap. "Marked? What does that mean?" Before he could answer, the wind picked up, howling through the trees. The whispers returned, swirling around us like a storm. I could swear I heard Ethan's name tangled within the cacophony. Panic gripped my chest. "Stay away from the woods," the farmer yelled, his voice barely audible over the noise. I could feel the ground trembling beneath me, and shadows began to crawl closer from the trees. I looked back at the farmer, terrified. "What do I do?" His face paled. "You find the pendant. It's the only way to protect him." The ground shook violently, and a blinding flash of light erupted from the forest. "No, not now," the farmer shouted as a figure began to emerge, dark and swirling, from the heart of the woods. My heart raced as I turned to run. I sprinted down the porch steps, heading toward my car. I needed to get to Ethan. I needed to warn him. I didn't look back as the whispers grew louder, merging into a chilling harmony. I fumbled with my keys, and suddenly I heard a voice behind me. "You can't escape." I froze. That voice. It sounded like Ethan, but deeper, distorted. I whirled around, dread pooling in my stomach. Shadows surged forward, stretching out their fingers toward me. I had to move. I had to save him. But as I turned back toward my car, I saw the woods beginning to close off behind me. It was too late. Now something was in the way of my escape, something dark, moving with purpose. "Ethan!" I screamed, despair flooding my mind as the shadows closed in. I bolted toward the car, desperation fueling my legs. "Ethan!" I shouted again, but the word felt like it was swallowed by the thickening air. The sound of rustling leaves crescendoed, and the shadows twisted closer. A suffocating darkness crept into my vision, drawing my focus away from the car and towards the menacing figure in the woods. "Ethan!" My voice came out as a breathless whisper. Just as I reached for the door, a sharp pain shot through my ankle. I stumbled, falling hard onto the ground, my keys flying from my grip. I glanced down, seeing the roots of a tree had snaked across my path, grasping at my leg like fingers of despair. They pulsed, alive and hungry. I struggled to free myself, but each attempt only seemed to tighten their grip. In that moment of panic, I heard the whispers again, clearer now. They weren't just incoherent sounds. They formed shapes in the air, shadows shifting and morphing. Those whispers called out to me, drawing my attention to the darkness behind the trees. I felt the intensity of their presence, a sensation of something ancient and desperate. "Mom." The call pierced through the noise, and my heart soared at the sound of Ethan's voice. I turned toward it like a moth to a flame, but in doing so I felt the pull of the dark whispers become sharper. They intertwined with the air, curling around my arms and legs like invisible chains. Fear gripped me, and I strained against the roots. "Ethan, where are you?" Then, without warning, a figure stumbled into view from the tree line. It was him. Ethan's face was pale, and his eyes were wide with confusion. "Mom!" he cried again, searching for me. His cries broke through my panic. I managed to push myself free from the roots, pain shooting through my ankle as I stood. I called out to him, "Ethan, run! Get away from the woods!" But the shadows around him grew thicker. I could see dark shapes swirling at his feet, whispering secrets of fear and dread. I rushed forward, ignoring the ache in my body. My only focus was getting to him. Every step felt like wading through quicksand. I could almost sense the reaching tendrils of darkness trying to pull me back. "Ethan," I repeated, my voice cracking. He stood frozen, entranced by something unseen, and then the shadows shifted, revealing a twisted form behind him. It was the figure I'd seen before, the one that called out with Ethan's voice. My blood ran cold as it loomed closer, a grotesque mimicry of my son. "No, stay back!" I screamed, plunging forward as the darkness rushed towards him. I pushed Ethan aside just as the shadows lunged. Everything went dark. The cold enveloped me like a suffocating blanket, and I struggled to breathe. I couldn't see anything, just a void of black. When the light flickered back, I was on my knees. A dense fog swirled around me, obscuring the view of the woods. But Ethan was gone. I felt a panic rise like bile in my throat. "Ethan!" My voice echoed in the emptiness. That's when I saw it. Lying on the ground, partially buried in the soil, was a pendant, glimmering faintly against the darkness. It was the same pendant the farmer had mentioned. My heart raced as I reached for it, knowing instinctively it was the key to protecting Ethan. The whispers intensified, and I felt the weight of the shadows pressing in. I had to grab it before it was too late. They wanted Ethan, and I was in their way. It was in. The ground felt cold and unwelcoming beneath me as I reached for the pendant. My fingers trembled as I grasped it, feeling its smooth surface pulse with energy. The whispers surged, louder now, as if they were angry I had found something that belonged to me. I could hear fragments of words, a warning, a plea. I shoved the pendant into my pocket, feeling its weight anchor me to this moment. I stood, scanning the fog for any sign of Ethan. "Where are you?" I muttered, my breath catching in my throat. I braced myself against a tree, trying to steady my racing heart. Just then, a soft rustle disrupted the silence, causing me to spin around. "Ethan!" I called out, anxiety lacing my voice. The shadows moved, bending and stretching as if mocking my desperation. I took a cautious step toward the noise, the forest feeling alive, as if it was breathing around me. It felt wrong. Every part of me screamed to turn back, to fight against whatever unseen force lurked behind the trees. But I couldn't abandon Ethan. Suddenly, I caught movement in my peripheral vision. A figure emerged from the mist. My stomach dropped as recognition hit me. It was the farmer, the one who had spoken of the pendant, his eyes wide and intent. "You shouldn't be here," he said, urgency coloring his voice. "It's not safe." "Where's my son? Where's Ethan?" I demanded, desperation clawing at my chest. He stepped closer, shaking his head. "You mustn't let the shadows take you. They want him. You have something they desire now." My fingers instinctively brushed against the pendant in my pocket. "Is this why they want him? This pendant?" "Yes. It binds you to the darkness," he explained, glancing over his shoulder as if sensing something behind him. "You must choose." "Choose what?" I was losing patience. "I just want my son." He inhaled deeply. "To save him, you must leave this place. But if you do, the whispers will follow. You cannot escape their hunger. The weight of his words slammed against me. I couldn't comprehend what he was asking. I won't leave him to those things. Suddenly the ground trembled beneath my feet, sending shockwaves through the fog. The shadows flickered, looming larger, more determined. "They're coming!" I shouted, fear surging through me as I grabbed the farmer's arm. "Help me find him!" But he shook his head, stepping backward. "It's too late for me. I made a deal 8 years ago. It binds me to this land." His expression softened, one of pity and understanding. "You must go now." Panic surged as I searched the fog, desperate to catch a glimpse of Ethan. "No! Ethan!" I yelled, my voice swallowed by the encroaching darkness. With every moment that passed, the shadows grew bolder, closing in like predators. The pendant burned against my skin, and a sudden realization gripped me. If I left without Ethan, I would lose him forever. Yet staying would risk my own soul. As the darkness pressed in, I felt a flicker of determination. The farmer was right. I had to make a choice. I couldn't let the whispers win. I had come too far to turn back now, and that was when I heard it. The faint sound of laughter echoing from deep within the fog. Ethan's laugh. "Ethan!" I called, my heart racing. "I'm coming!" The shadows shifted again, but this time I wouldn't let them stop me. I steeled myself, focusing on that sweet sound echoing through the darkness, determined to find my son before it was too late. I pushed onward, the laughter guiding me deeper into the mist. Each step felt like a leap into the unknown, the chilling air thick with secrets. If Ethan was close, I had to find him quickly. The whispers in my ears grew frantic, swirling around me like a tempest. "Ethan!" I shouted again, but my voice felt feeble against the looming shadows. The fog swirled thicker, shifting like living tendrils, and I could almost feel them brushing against my skin. I forced myself to take another step, telling myself I was closer. Then, without warning, the laughter stopped. An uneasy silence fell, punctured only by my heavy breathing. I scanned the fog, panic rising like bile. "Ethan!" I called, my voice trembling. The only reply was a distant rustling in the underbrush, a sound that made my heart race faster. In that moment of silence, the farmer's warning echoed in my mind. "The whispers will follow. You cannot escape their hunger." I shut my eyes for a brief second, trying to push back the waves of fear. I had to be brave. I had to save Ethan. As I stepped further into the depths of the fog, a glowing light caught my eye, piercing through the haze like a beacon. My heart leaped at the sight. I rushed toward it, and as I did, dread clawed at me. What if it wasn't Ethan? What if it was something worse? When I reached the light, I found a clearing. At the center was an ancient oak tree, its gnarled roots snaking into the ground like fingers gripping onto a treasure. The air crackled with energy, and I felt the pendant grow warm against my chest, almost as if it was alive. But Ethan wasn't there. I scanned the area, my eyes frantically searching for any sign of him. That's when I noticed something shimmering at the base of the tree, a small wooden box, roughly carved and intricate, with symbols that seemed familiar, the same ones as on the pendant. I approached it slowly, dread swirling in my stomach. My fingers brushed the carvings, and an image flashed in my mind, a vision of Ethan, laughing, before being pulled into the shadows. My breath caught in my throat. Was this box a part of whatever had taken him? Suddenly, a low growl echoed from behind me. I turned, heart pounding, and saw shadows coiling at the edge of the clearing. Shapes began to emerge, deep and menacing, their eyes glowing with a predatory hunger. I realized with mounting terror that they were the source of the whispers. The box called to me, but I hesitated. I remembered the farmer's words. Each decision mattered now. If I opened it, what would happen? Would it lead me to Ethan, or deeper into the shadows? The growls grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. I clutched the pendant tightly, my heart racing. What if opening it would cost me everything? Then, through the shadows, I caught a glimpse of movement. A small figure darted past the trees, just beyond reach. "Ethan!" I shouted, instinct surging through me. I couldn't lose him again. In that moment, I made my choice. I lunged for the box, ready to uncover whatever secrets lay inside. The shadows lunged with me, ready to reclaim what they believed was theirs. And that was when everything went dark. I woke up with a jolt, gasping for air. The world around me was black, but I could feel the cool ground beneath me. My heart pounded in my chest like a drum. Had I fainted? Where was I? I scrambled to my feet, clutching at the pendant. Its warmth steadied me, a small comfort in the growing darkness. Slowly, a faint glow began to pierce through the shadow, illuminating the edges of what looked like a cave. Stalactites hung low, and damp stone walls surrounded me. "Ethan!" I shouted again, the echo bouncing back at me. A sense of urgency pushed me forward. I didn't have time to waste. I stumbled deeper into the cave, the ground uneven underfoot. The whispers had dulled to a low, ominous murmur, but I could still feel their presence watching from the darkness. Something brushed against my ankle, a subtle shift in the shadows. I froze, my mind raced. What was that? The echoes of my voice faded, replaced by a chilling silence. I took a cautious step, then another, carefully navigating the dimly lit path. As I moved deeper, I spotted another flicker of light ahead. It was brighter than before, pulsating softly like a heartbeat. I was drawn to it, my curiosity eclipsing my fear. When I reached the light, I found another clearing, larger this time. In the center was a stone altar, carved with the same symbols as the box. I approached it cautiously. The light radiated from a large crystal embedded in the altar's surface, casting shimmering reflections on the walls. Just then, I heard a familiar voice. "Help me!" It was Ethan. "Ethan, where are you?" I called, heart soaring at the sound of his voice. I scanned the clearing, but there was no sign of him. "Ethan, over here." His voice was faint, almost echoing from above me. I looked up and saw a ledge. There he was, trapped under shimmering vines that twisted like serpents around his arms and legs. Panic gripped me. I rushed toward the base of the altar, my mind whirling with thoughts. I had to get to him, too, but as I hurried, the ground trembled, sending vibrations through my feet. The shadows at the cave's entrance morphed into figures, their glowing eyes fixated on me. The murmurs rose to a cacophony of whispers, growing more frantic. The crystal pulsed again, and suddenly a vision flashed before me. The farmer's weathered face, his warning echoing, "The whispers will follow." I stumbled back, the realization hitting me hard. This was a trap, a way to keep unwary souls from escaping. I needed to make a choice, but felt paralyzed. Would I take the risk and try to free Ethan, knowing they were closing in on me? Or should I retreat, find another way out and leave him behind? "I'm coming," I shouted to him, determination flooding my veins. I had to rescue him no matter the cost. There was no way I was leaving him to those creatures. I reached for the crystal, hoping it held some kind of power that would help us both. That's when I heard a low, rumbling growl from behind me, closer than before. I turned and saw the shadows solidifying into forms. I had only moments to act, and every second felt like a lifetime. I lunged for the crystal, my fingers brushing its smooth surface. As soon as I made contact, a surge of energy shot through me. The air around me crackled, and bright light erupted from the crystal, forcing the shadows back for a brief moment. I could see the figures more clearly now. They were grotesque, twisted shapes, part human, part something much darker. "Ethan, hold on," I yelled, my voice shaking. I could see the terror in his eyes as the vines tightened around him, their shimmering surface pulsing with a faint, eerie light. I needed to get him free. I took a deep breath and focused on the crystal, feeling its power flow into me. But the shadows regrouped, flanking me like predators ready to pounce. I could hear their whispers again, louder now, filling my mind with doubts. "It's no use," one voice hissed. "You can't save him." Ignoring them, I reached for the pendant around my neck, hoping it would amplify the crystal's power. I thought of Ethan, of everything we had shared, and summoned every ounce of strength I had. "Let go of him," I screamed, willing the light to expand. The crystal reacted, sending a shock wave of energy that illuminated the entire cave. The creatures shrieked, their glowing eyes flickering. Ethan's vines shuddered but remained firm. A knot of frustration twisted in my gut. I needed to do more. Suddenly, everything went dark again. The crystal flickered. The power waned as the shadows closed in, shrieking in rage. I felt a sharp tug on my foot, and before I knew it, I was yanked backwards. I stumbled, hitting the ground hard. "Leave her!" Ethan shouted, straining against the vines. I scrambled to my feet, breathless and terrified. The shadows now surrounded me, their forms shifting closer. Panic wrapped around me like a vice, constricting my thoughts. There was no easy way out. Then from the corner of my eye, I noticed something glimmering near the altar. It was another stone, different from the crystal but just as radiant. Could it be another source of power? I made a split-second decision. "I'll get it," I shouted to Ethan, adrenaline coursing through me. "Be careful," his voice echoed from above, but I didn't have time to consider his warning. I sprinted toward the altar, the shadows snapping at my heels. I grabbed the stone and held it tightly, feeling its warmth surge into me like fire. As I turned, I saw the shadows lunging forward, their claws extended. My heart raced. In that moment, something primal awoke inside me. I focused on the stone, and it responded, a brilliant glow erupting from my palms. "Get away," I roared, unleashing the energy. A wave radiated outwards, crashing against the dark figures. They snarled, some disintegrating into wisps, while others staggered back, momentarily stunned. But it wasn't enough. They regrouped, and I could feel their anger building. Time was running out. I needed to act fast. "Ethan," I called, desperation creeping into my voice. "Hang on, I'm coming." Just then I heard a crack above me. I looked up to see a massive stalactite beginning to wobble. A sudden realization struck me. Maybe I didn't have to fight them head on. I felt a surge of hope mixed with fear. I had one chance. But would it work? I steadied the stone in my grasp, ready to make my move. The shadows charged, and I took a deep breath, preparing to unleash everything I had as I made a reckless dash toward the altar. The shadows surged forward, their ravenous forms twisting and writhing as they closed in on me. With every step I took, I felt their cold breath against my skin, urging me to turn back. But there was no time for doubt. I had to save Ethan. "Hold on, buddy," I shouted, racing towards the altar. The second stone pulsed in my grip, and I could feel its heat merging with the frantic rhythm of my heart. It was now or never. I reached the altar, barely glancing at Ethan as he struggled against the shimmering vines, his eyes filled with terror. I steadied myself, balancing the weight of both stones in my hands. The cavern seemed to pulse with energy, the whispers rising to a deafening crescendo, demanding my surrender. With a primal yell, I hurled the glowing stone towards the shadows. The moment it left my hand, a blinding beam of light shot out, erupting in an explosion of energy. The room lit up like 1,000 suns, casting back the darkness that threatened to consume us. The shadows shrieked, their forms flickering and dissipating under the onslaught. I could see the anguish etched on their distorted faces, faces that had once belonged to something human. They were losing their power, clawing at the remnants of their existence. "Now, Ethan!" I shouted, focusing my energy on the vines that ensnared him. The stones thrummed in response, and as I willed the light to grow stronger, the vines began to tremble. "Mom," he cried, a combination of fear and hope bursting through his voice. The vine shuddered and fell away, disintegrating into wisps of shadow. I watched in awe as he broke free, falling onto the altar with a thud. But there was no time to celebrate. Shadows clung stubbornly to him, remnants that refused to vanish. "Quick, grab the stones," I urged, and Ethan obeyed, snatching the crystal glowing beneath me. I reached out for him, relief rushing over me when I felt his small hand catch mine. Tension snapped in the air like a taut wire as we stood together, the light from the stones forming a protective barrier against the encroaching darkness. But even then, the whispers pressed in, growing louder, more frantic. There was nothing simple about this victory. "Together," I shouted. "On three we push the light." "Okay," he answered, determination roaring in his innocent voice. "1, 2, 3. With all our might, we pressed the stones forward, and a dazzling burst of light transformed the chamber into a realm of brilliance. The shadows wailed as they were engulfed, their forms disintegrating like ash in the wind. The very walls of the cave vibrated with our combined energy until I felt the overwhelming force pull us both towards the altar. Then, everything went white. When I came to, I was sprawling on the ground next to Ethan in broad daylight. Sunlight poured down through the trees, illuminating everything around us. The air was sweet with the scent of earth and heather. I shot up, panic igniting in my chest as I frantically searched for the shadows. "Ethan!" I called, throwing my arms around him. He was safe, still warm and solid in my embrace. Relief washed over me like a tide, but questions began to swirl in my mind. What had just happened? "Mom, what was that?" he asked, his voice trembling. The innocence in his eyes seemed untouched, yet I could see the shadows of fear flickering at the edges of his memory. "I don't know, love," I admitted, my heart still racing. "But we're out. We're safe." "Did we win?" His question hung in the air, heavy with ambiguity. I wanted to answer with confidence, but the truth remained. We had escaped, but I could still feel the echoes of the whispers lurking just beyond the tree line. The world around us was bathed in sunlight, but dark clouds still hovered on the horizon of my mind. I glanced back toward the woods, half expecting to see a figure standing amongst the trees, waiting for its chance again. But there was nothing, only stillness. Yet the air fizzled with unanswered questions that hovered just out of reach. "We should go home, buddy," I said, turning away. The village felt distant, yet achingly familiar, and as we walked, I carried the weight of gratitude and dread. The encounter had changed everything. As we made our way down the familiar path, I cast one last glance at the woods, unwilling to lose sight of what we had endured. Shadows had ebbed, but would they return? I couldn't know. I moved to a different city just days later. Sometimes I wonder if the whispers still linger in that village, if the shadows crave what they lost. But mostly, I try not to think about it, convincing myself it was a dream. Because deep down, somewhere behind that fear, I can't shake the feeling that the darkness is never really gone.